Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rolling with the Punches. Today we have the one and only matchmaker for Golden Boy Promotions, Roberto Diaz, on hand today, and also David Contreras from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. How are you guys doing today?
Roberto.
I'm doing really good. Thank you guys for having me. I mean, it's a pleasure. I can already feel the vibe. To be honest, I'm excited. I want to have some fun, and let's roll. Let's roll with the punches.
Hey, Roberto, one of the questions that I have, and is there, we have different Hall of Fames, the Nevada Hall of Fame. Right now we were talking about the WBC or WBA Hall of Fame. Do they have a category for matchmakers?
Recently, prior to COVID, I was surprised. I started getting emails. To answer the question, yes, they do.
Okay.
But I got an email from another promoter and said, "Hey, congratulations." And I'm like, for what? And then he's like, "Oh, you don't know yet? Oh, I'm sorry if I blew the surprise. Check your Facebook page." And I don't have Facebook. And then he sends me the link, and I look out on my wife's, and it's like the inductees. Oscar De La Hoya is an inductee. Roy Engelbrecht was a promoter who notified me. And I was added there for the West Coast inductees for the Hall of Fame as a matchmaker. So I was like, wow, that's all, it's a great honor that I would be considered, because normally you think you're going to be doing it for many, many, many years before the recognition comes. But then COVID hit, so it got canceled. So this year it got moved, and I'm like, see, with my luck, I got inducted. I got cut, but I never got the ceremony. But obviously, COVID is more important to get rid of it and clear it. But it was supposed to be moved. It got moved to this year in March, but we're still under COVID restrictions in California. So I haven't heard. I think they're probably going to move it down later in the year. But yes, they do have a position for matchmakers are inducted.
Well, I'll tell you, it's a great choice, because if there wasn't, we were going to create one. Because you know what? Yeah, we've been watching we've been watching boxing. One of the things that Jaime and I are pretty popular for is I grew up down in San Diego, right next to the border. And since I'm 61 years old now, but since I was 10 years old or 8 years old, every Saturday night I would watch boxing on Channel 12 or Wide World of Sports. And like I tell everybody else, I was the remote control and I was the antenna. Because back then, you know what I mean? Mueve la antena, you got to move it, no te muevas, cabrón. So you're standing like there. And I'll tell you, matchmakers, many of the times they're overlooked. And I'll tell you, some of the greatest fights that we've seen throughout the generations have been not only because of the fighters, but because of the matchmakers. And that's why you're on our show. We're honored to have you, because you're considered by many, and including Jaime and myself and our show, as one of the best matchmakers ever.
I'm truly honored. Wow. Thank you. Thank you. I get goosebumps. I really appreciate that. You're right. Sometimes, most times, a great fight, props always, obviously, to the fighters, then the promoters. But the matchmaker is that behind the scenes guy that once the job is done, on to the next, goes quietly in the sunset. Nobody really knows of him. Now more, we get more notoriety than in the past because of social media, because of, the television, but all those fights that maybe from the Olympic, Don Chargan and all those great matchmakers. I mean, today, Bruce Trampler and Brad and, but it's off to the sunset because you're ready to do the next show. You're not sticking around to like the celebration of it. You're on, okay, this show is done. Everything went good. Everything went through. So move on to the next. I got to start getting ready for the next one. That's really the life of the matchmaker. I don't look at now the months of January and February going by. I look at, okay, that show's gone, on to the next. But I really enjoy. I mean, obviously, I'm a fan of boxing. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do this. Because of the ups and downs and all the hurdles you face. But when you hear people like yourself saying this of an individual, of myself and personal, it's like all those bumps you go through, wow, they really are worth it because somebody out there is enjoying it or recognizing or that pat on the back that you like. You're not looking for that attention, but when it comes, it's like, wow, somebody did notice it, you know? So thank you from the bottom of my heart. It really means a lot.
To me, it's the foundation. It's the foundation of a promoter. Because I mean, you could have the face of boxing as that promotional company, but if those fights are no good, no one's going to come back and watch them. And especially if, you know, when you get mismatches and the whole 9 yards, you know, you want to create that energy for the fight fans. And I think Golden Boy has done a great job, and that's why you're so respected, and that's why we keep on tuning in to all the fights that you guys do, because we know we're going to get good fights. We're going to get great fights. We're going to get legendary fights.
Thank you. I think it means a lot. It means a lot because one thing as a fan that I don't like to see is when you pull up a bout card and it's like, you already know who's going to win. Everybody on this side is going to win. Oh, look at these records. And, you know, there was a time that was very frustrating for me because the advantage I have and the ability that I have to make these competitive fights and fights that are going to be sometimes upsets and all is who my boss is. Because he fought everybody, because he didn't take the easy route, he doesn't want his guys to take the easy route or fight, just, you know, build records. So he always comes in and it's like, Roberto, what do we have going on? Hey, Robbie, show me the card. Are we have competitive fights? Are we going to have good fights? Are the fans going to walk out happy? If not, I want good fights. Remember that. I want good fights. But there was a time where the fights were so uneven and all the knockouts of fighters that weren't from our stable, but being showcased. And my guys were in tough fights on undercards. And normally you do it opposite. You want the TV fights to be the real fights, the competitive fights, the 50-50 fights. Your undercard 4 and 6 rounders, those are your building fights where you're getting your young fighters to start progressing and getting experience. But it was the opposite with us. Our TV fights were ending in 1 round, and my undercard fights with our Golden Boy stable guys were battling, you know, to life and death to the end of the fight. And so it came back. Our fighters were like, hey, how come we should be on TV? So that cleared up quick. And when we had that split that everybody is aware of, it was like, okay, now let's rebuild and let's do the fights how the fans want them. And sometimes there's going to be losses and sometimes there's going to be wins. But at the end of the day, as long as the fan is happy, you know, that's at the end of the day what entertainment, what boxing is for the fans.
How hard is it to work with other promotional companies when you have a superstar, they have a superstar, to make that fight? I mean, I can imagine the amount of hours that are poured into, you know, like right now with Ryan Garcia calling out certain fighters under other promotions. I mean, you're in there in the mix trying to make it happen. I mean, is it difficult working with other promotional companies? Because I mean, that a lot of times it's their cash cow that's up for, you know, for grabs. And
it's difficult. It's also depending. I mean, when it's the top of the top, like for instance, Canelo Mayweather, yeah, there's gonna be every little word, every little change. Yeah, I need a bigger dressing room. I mean, there's so many back and forths on just the small stuff. But in general, the two fighters, if they want it, it's gonna happen. It's just between now promotionals and attorneys get involved and managers get involved, and I want one more flight or I want one more room. How many is he getting? Well, oh, he gets 10 tickets. I want to make sure I get 15 tickets because I'm the A side. But in general, I mean, we've worked at Golden Boy, we've worked with Don King, main events, Top Rank. Recently, we did during COVID, we did like 2 or 3 fights with Top Rank, Matchroom. We've done so many fights with them. So we've worked with PBC, Al Heyman. We've worked with almost everybody out there. And yes, like trainers or fighters or managers have a certain reputation. There's promoters as well that, you know, we're going to deal with this one now. Okay, just, you know, this one's not so easy. My I'll give you guys a good example. Don King. We had the world champion, Alberto Machado. I get a call. I get a call from Don King. Now, I haven't dealt with Don King in the past. And if you know, recently, Don King's been very, quiet here and there, shows up and pops up. Now, I've met him at the conventions and I've seen him. I admire him. I mean, at his age, to be up and down all these hours and in Cancun at conventions, or I saw him in Venezuela at a convention, and it was like, man, 80 plus years old, and look at him, he still has that spunk. And don't get him on the mic or talking, because he can go on and on and on and on. And he's very good at public speaking. And he calls me, and I get on the phone. He's like, this is Don King. And I'm like, oh man, you made it when Don King's calling you, right? Like, wow. I used to watch your shows. That I didn't tell him that, but I'm like, okay, hey Don, what's going on? Hey, so let's work on this fight. Blah blah blah. Machado, he had the opponent, the mandatory, and I'm like, okay, well, look, this is what I can offer you, and I gave him a figure, and he says, okay, that's a good start. I've heard a lot of good things about you, and it's so good to talk to you, and this and that, and I'm like, okay, he's blowing me up. He's good. He's blowing me up, so I can go home and say, wow, Don King knows about me. Wow, and I'm like, okay, yeah, all right, okay, Don. So you want me to send you the contract? I'm trying to cut him off because he's going on about it's such a good, it's so good to be talking with somebody like you instead of some others there at your company. And he's like, all right. I caught it. I caught it. It was like, maybe if I would have been a little distracted, he could have eating me up, but I caught it. And I'm like, all right, so do I send you the contract? Do you want me to email it, fax it? What do you want? Well, no, hold on. That figure you gave me, that's good enough for me. I think he said for me. But what about or he could have said the fighter. He goes, but what about for me now? And I'm like, well, that's the total package. Because when you do a deal with a promoter, you're going to make him this is my offer to you. Now, as his promoter, he's invested in the fighter. He has to say, okay, from this, I'm going to pay my fighter this much, and I'm going to make this much. If your fighter has to make more than your offer, then that's when you're going back and forth in the negotiating, or it ends up in purse bid. I had the champion. He had the mandatory. The split was like 75-25. And he says, well, that figure you gave me, that's good for the fighter, but what about my part? And I said, that's the total package, Don. I can't do more. This fight's not worth much. I'm sorry, but your guy is not known. He's a mandatory because that's how they have him ranked. But worldwide, TV network fans, they don't know him. We can go to purse bid. And I said, I welcome it. If we can negotiate it, that's what we have to do. He goes, well, I'm going to talk to the WBA. My guy's been waiting a long time, and I'm going to get the split. I said, it's 75-25, Don. It's not really to your advantage to go to bid. He goes, well, I'm going to get that changed. I'm like, how are you going to get that changed? It's in the rules. I'm going to get that changed. I'll call you back next week. Long story short, that fight didn't get made for about 7 months.
Wow.
Back and forth. Finally, he did get that split changed. And I was like, to the point, he was trying to get it 50-50. And I'm like, fighting with the BA, how are you going to do 50-50? And eventually, we worked it out a day before we went to purse bid, got the deal done. Machado won a decision. And that was my story with Don King. It took about 7 months to make the fight. And this was pre-COVID, so we couldn't use the COVID experience. But, it's fun. You learn, you hear the stories, and you see the people up close. And it's like, to have met Don Jose Suleiman, I was at the December 25th. I went to the hospital to visit him on Christmas Day and spend some hours with him. And a few weeks after he passed, and it was like, I'll never forget that. I was there a few weeks before, and he was great. He was great. He had been a little bad the night before. They didn't want, his with the family and everything. But on the 25th, sharp, and we were talking boxing. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. And then the family was like, no, he's okay. That's his life, and that was his life. I mean, he lived for his fighters, and he lived for boxing.
Man, Roberto, one quick, first of all, thank you very much for your service in law enforcement as a probation officer for the County of San Diego. So you're a probation officer. How did you get into boxing? I'm sure your father being Mexicano, he always watched, just like my dad and Jaime's dad, watching boxing every Saturday night. Did you, as a young man, did you always like boxing? How did you get into the boxing scene?
As far as I can remember, yes, you're absolutely right. My dad loved boxing, big boxing fan, would take me as a little kid to the Cow Palace in San Francisco, and I could care less about boxing at the time. Sit down and watch, two men hitting each other. I wanted to run around and just goof off. My dad told me once that he turned around and I wasn't there, and next thing you know, I was up in the ring with the ring card. Before they had the beautiful ring card girls, it was kids, young kids, just go get a hot dog, and you have to take the ring up, the card. So I was like, hey, how do I get a hot dog? And they said, if you take it up, but I was like 8 years old, just got up in the ring, did the round, come back, hey, can I get another hot dog? So then obviously at the house, when the big fights were going on, it was a big party. My dad had all his friends and family, my uncles and cousins and everybody over. So to me, it was always like, wow, a birthday party type whenever there was a fight. Then around 10 or 12, when I started really sitting down in the living room with all the, the guests and family to watch the fights, then I started really getting into it and became very passionate, loved it. In my teenage years, now living in Chula Vista, I would drive to LA on my own, drive to Mexicali, to the Calafia, drive wherever to go to Vegas. I worked at Circuit City for a long time and in National City. And I would tell my boss, hey, this weekend of this date, don't count on me. I won't be here because I got to go to a Chavez fight. And they were always like, if I don't give you the permission, what will you do? If I don't give you the days off? I said, I'll quit. You would quit? I said, absolutely. If Chavez is fighting, I'm either at home watching it or I'm in Vegas watching it. So it's up to you. Like, hey, you're that passionate. I said, yeah, I'm that passionate for it.
And Roberto, during that time, were you actually meeting the boxers? Were you talking to them, getting their autographs, or were you just just watching them and just enjoying the fights? Did you ever? How did you meet?
I was a big type fan. Probably one of those. Let's say I go to this event, and you see the fighters and whoever it was. I mean, that's Julian Jackson, Bruce Seldon. All the fighters that were at the events. I was like, hey, can I get a picture? We didn't have camera phones, so I carry a camera.
Yeah.
Hey, here, take this picture for me. And would pose and
awesome, man. Yeah.
So I blow up my pictures for the next event, 8x10, and then I take them in a little portfolio right here and carry it. And I'm walking them. Hey, there's Julian Jackson. Run up to him, Julian Hawk. Hey, can you sign in for me? Marvin Hagler. Finito Lopez. I'd try to get into weigh. It's so funny because I would beg to get into the weigh-ins or press conferences after the fight. Yeah. Security's like, no, you don't have a credential. Now I understand that. Yeah. And it's like, come on, man, come on. Hey, here's a 20. Here's, I wasn't making millions. So I was like, here's a little $20. And they're looking at me now. Eventually, a couple times, get in, man. What are you going to do? I'd say, I just want a picture. I just want an autograph. Look, there's Trinidad, man. That's my favorite fight. Let me go in there. So I was the biggest fan. I mean, the garage, next time we'll do it, I'll move the system down there. We'll do the garage. I have all the pictures, with the Klitschko's and Nassim and obviously with Marco. I was with Marco for almost 10 years and also going to the events with Barrera. Then, met Ricky Hatton at a Barrera event because he was a Barrera fan. And then we became great friends and we're still in contact. So yes, I was a very, very big fan.
Wow. Roberto, I want to ask you about a fighter you just mentioned. And to me, I think he's the most underrepresented legend that came out of Mexico. He's never, for some reason, never really mentioned on the list of great fighters from Mexico. But Finito Lopez, to me, man, I think he's so overlooked.
Yes.
And I don't know why.
I believe it has a lot to do with his weight class.
Yeah.
I believe it has a lot to do with he didn't have that dance partner like Barrera had Morales had Barrera. He didn't. Chiquita Gonzalez had Carvajal. Even today you're going to see Chocolatito again with Estrada. He didn't have. I mean, he did fight Rosendo Alvarez twice, but he didn't have that mega fight. If he would have gone up one more division and maybe fought Chiquita Gonzalez or the Carbajal, I think we'd mention him more. But when you see his skill level, if he would have been a featherweight or a welterweight doing what he did, people would be talking about him every day because his beauty of his skill. I mean, we talk about Marquez. Marquez wasn't as fine, as good as he was, as fine as Finito. You know, the back step, the movement, the leg movement, so dominant for so many years. Finito told me when he got dropped by Rosendo Alvarez in Mexico City, he said, Roberto, I felt like I went inside that ring like in a hole. I wasn't going to get up. I felt like I sunk so many feet down but when I got up, I knew this guy was going to come and kill me. He was going to come and rip my head off. But how do I show him that I'm not that hurt? Come on. But inside me was, I hope he doesn't come on. I hope he doesn't come forward. That's crazy. But to have that in your mind when you're that hurt and buzzed, you know, it's like only a special fighter. He said it. I think when he left to Japan, there was like one reporter or nobody at the airport. And when he came back from winning his first world title, everybody was waiting for him with open arms. And it's crazy. I mean, very, very, very underrated. One of the best in the history of boxing. And a good guy.
So what's next for Golden Boy, man? What's in the mix?
We are very excited. One of our top contenders, I won't say prospect anymore, even though he has what today would be called prospect because of the amount of fights. He's on a fast track, and that's Virgil Ortiz. Tremendous young man, tremendous fighter inside the ring, very quiet, but lives, breathes, sleeps, eats boxing, very disciplined. And he's in his toughest fight. He's fighting a former world champion in Maurice Hooker in Fort Worth. That's March 20th. And we got a stacked undercard. I'm excited. I mean, it's slowly coming back. They just opened up, I think, Wednesday, Texas. So we're hoping to see more fans. And, we're going to still take the measurements to keep it as safe as possible so that we don't have a surprise. But we're excited. It's going to be a fun card. We have Cenicia Estrada fighting for a world title against Anabel Ortiz. Cenicia, and for those that know Cenicia, she's a girl that is badass. I mean, she's from East LA, doing the 19-0, won already a world title, dropped a couple divisions from 112, 105, and fighting for another world title against a champion who's been dominant for so many years in Anabel Ortiz. Has like more than 10 title defenses already. So it's going to be a very experienced world champion against a very talented challenger. And then you have Pablo Cesar Cano, who's been around for a few years. We were going over with him the other day, and he's been a pro 15 years already. And he's not even, I think he's just turned 30. But the kid turned, pro in Mexico very early, and he's fought Eric Morales, he fought him on 1 week notice. He's fought Shane Mosley, he's fought Paulie Malignaggi, he's fought Jorge Linares, he's fought everybody. And he's coming in against the kid from East LA who's undefeated in Jonathan Navarro. And that's something that I like to do. You put a name, a former world champion against a young contender prospect. And what you get there is passing of the torch sometimes, or school's in session sometimes, and I'm going to teach you something. Yeah. And I like it because if the young fighter loses, it's not the end of the world. Our great fighters of the past all lost. Yep. Muhammad Ali, the greatest, lost. Sugar Ray Robinson, the Fabulous Four. I always mention them because they fought each other and they all lost to each other, but we still talk about them, 30, 40 years later with Hagler and Hearns and Duran and Leonard. Too many fighters today are so worried about defending that zero. And that's the most important thing. You can defend that zero and 20 years from now, retire now 30-0, and they're not going to remember you because, wait a minute, who did he fight? No, I don't remember. But these kids that lost and came back after a loss, that shows you a lot of character. So that's why
going back all the way to Henry Armstrong.
Exactly. We still remember Henry Armstrong. He lost, But we remember he held 3 divisions at the same time. So and there's fighters now I'm hearing that want to hold 3 divisions at the same time. It's not Henry Armstrong, because you're winning titles in interims or vacant. No, go beat a world champion. Go beat an established world champion.
And he did all 3 of them in 10 months.
Yep. No, I mean, that's one thing with Canelo that I give him props. I mean, fought December, fought February, and now he's going to fight May in a period that, fighters of his level are fighting like once, and pre-COVID, they're fighting once a year.
Yeah.
And that's not, people forget about that. Right now, regardless of the opponents, people are seeing Canelo in December, in February, in May. Hey, he stays relevant, even though he is right now, pound for pound, the best fighter in boxing. But the young kid, and he's established, he doesn't need to do this. He's made his money, he's made his name, but he's still going for more legacy and to be remembered as a great. And that's what these young fighters today need to remember. Hey, I want to be remembered. When they first start, they all tell you the same thing. When they first start, whether it's in the amateurs or whether it's in the pros, I want to be known. I want to be a world champion. I want to cement history. I want to be a role model for young kids. It's never, the first one is never, I want to be a millionaire. Along with that, money's going to come. But during the process of the growth, they start forgetting what I wanted to and now what I want to. And if it turns into money, and yes, they have to be paid. It's all about money too. It's a business. They got to bring back, to take care of themselves for after boxing and invest in their families. But let's not lose track on why you started as a little chavalito to win that $5 medal and come home and say, look, I'm the best. That was the purpose at the time. That's what the purpose should be. And that's why some of these legends were so good. I mean, Marvin Hagler locked himself in like a dungeon type basement and wouldn't see his family. He got out of a comfort zone. I think that's what made him so great. Mm-hmm. Today, you want to see, they want to train in comfort. A good example, Palm Springs, Nassim Hamed was training like in a golf resort. In Barrera, we were up in Big Bear with snow of like 3 or 4 feet and tough conditions. But that's what worked. The Rocky lifestyle. Mm-hmm. You saw it right there. That was when in that camp, I was like, and then we'd see clips of like the promotion and see Hamed in a golf cart. I'm like, man, I should be in Palm Springs. Why am I up here in the cold? But look, it worked out for Barrera, one of his biggest victories.
Yeah. Roberto, right now, when you were talking about Don King lives real close to where I live. Over here in Fort Lauderdale, he lives in Boca Raton. As a matter of fact, I go by his house all the time. I ride my bike over there. And the reason why I mentioned Don King, I know that Golden Boy and yourself also as a matchmaker, you're always looking for new talent. And there's a lot of young men that one of the things that I'm really impressed when Jaime and I started rolling with the punches, we started interviewing a lot of up and coming fighters, Raul Lizárraga, Lorenzano, a lot of great fighters, Cobrita, the female. And I'm telling you, one of the things that Danny Roman, and I could go on, Santillan, is that these young men and young ladies, they're committed. And you're absolutely right. They want to change the world. They have a great heart. Now, if there is a fighter, say, for example, here in Fort Lauderdale or in Miami or Boca Raton, and they want to fight for Golden Boy someday, but there's not a promotional company here that will sign them, what's the process for them to call you or call somebody from Golden Boy? What's the process for a new fighter?
We back in the day, they would send me DVDs. I would get DVDs, and every time it's like, I'd get a stack when I would travel from one fight to the other, and I'd take them with me and watch. And you'd have a father or a trainer or a manager send you the DVD. Now, DVDs aside, I'll get emails, I'll get calls, and say, look, I have this young talented fighter. Okay, send me some footage, send me a little bio, send me a little background. I'll do my own background check and everything. Like, obviously the PO kicks in and then you start looking, let me see if this is all facts and everything. But a lot of the times what I like to see is the kid in action, in the ring. Because to see, and this is what I get at times, and I'll go back to when I used to get the DVDs, jumping rope or hitting the bag or shadow boxing. then sometimes I get sparring sessions, or I'll get today, hey, we'll go spar with anybody you want, or I can send you a sparring session. I don't like sparring sessions. Not necessarily because I don't like them. It'll tell you something, but I've seen sparring sessions where they can go to the other guy and say, look, I got to film something, so make sure my guy looks good. You know, don't throw back. No, I'd rather see a fight, no headgear, no. And even if, and I tell them, don't edit it. Send me the full footage. It's okay if I see him get hurt. I want to see that. I want to see how he reacts. Because sometimes, well, let's edit that. We don't want to show that. No, I want to see everything because I'm going to see the real character of this individual. So I welcome anybody, you know, all the time. I have something that I will reply. I've tons of emails and everything. Sooner or later, I'll get back. Sorry, I didn't get back to you yesterday, but send me some footage, send me something more. How old is he? You know, begin the dialogue to see if, you know, if there's interest and if there's a possibility. And sometimes I might tell them, look, I can't sign you right now. However, there's a fight where I could take a look at you. We can do this, this, and that. And then, you know, that's how I've met so many fighters that come in the B side and turned into Golden Boy fighters. Carlos Morales from Los Angeles came in 2 or 3 times and upset Golden Boy fighters before he got signed. Oscar Duarte, who's one of our top young men right now in the lightweight division. He's from Parral, Chihuahua. He came in on 2 days' notice, had to drop like 13 pounds in a week, and then still got to the weigh-in. We were actually looking at his opponent, a kid from Midwest, from I think he was from Boston area. Pavlik's manager and trainer spoke highly, brought him to us and said, man, you got to take a look at this kid. He is the next guy. And I'm like, okay. So we got him this opponent, came in, little güerito, struggling to make weight. No. Keep going. You got to lose a couple more pounds. And came back. Okay, you got 1 more pound to lose. Okay. Great fight. One, it was at the Nokia or Velasco. It was at the Velasco. And the crowd just went crazy. Güerito, he won over the crowd because he was the opponent. And it was a Mexico-Puerto Rico card that we did where the main event fighters were Mexican against Puerto Ricans. And he was an undercard, and it ended up being Mexican Puerto Rican. So that started it off, and he won the whole crowd over. Of course, the majority of the crowd. So when he came down by himself off the ring, I said, hey, I want to sign you. Who do I need to talk to? Manager, trainer, father, mother, who? Because he looked really young. And he's like, no, pues conmigo. And I'm like, but who manages? Solo no tengo manager. So I'm like, I want to sign you. Not because you won. Not because you won. I want to sign you because you took the fight. You went in against a 3-0, 3 knockouts. You did it on 2 days. You showed heart. You showed cojones. And you know what? That's why I want to sign you. The win, yeah, that's a bonus. I'm glad you won. He was undefeated. He was like 2-0 with 1 draw. And today, I mean, Oscar Duarte is one of our top guys. He's managed by Gabriel Soto, a famous movie star from Mexico, and a good friend. And Oscar's 19-1. He had a slip, a learning experience, but he's rebounded very well. Trains out there in Indio with Joel Diaz, and really, really good kid. Really good kid out of Parral, Chihuahua.
One last question, brother. One last question. Who do you see right now that's going to give Canelo a run for his money?
Honestly, I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody. You know, I've been reading how, the style of Billy Joe Saunders is going to give him a lot of trouble. Why? Because it gave Canelo trouble maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. That's not Canelo today. Canelo today is every fight. And this has been going on since he was a kid. I mean, every fight he gets better. He hasn't gotten to a point where, okay, that's it. Every fight he steps it up. I mean, with with Callum Smith in December, the way he systematically broke him down and cut the ring, cut it, but he was walking in without getting hit and walking in towards the bigger guy who should have been hitting him.
Yeah.
what he did to take away his pump. What did he have? Oh, that beautiful jab, okay? Or his right hand, whatever it was like, I'm gonna take it away. Hitting the arm, hitting the arm, hitting the arm, to the point where I can't throw the jab. I can't throw it. So he took away, but that's a fighter that's thinking as, I mean, I don't see, people are saying, you know, David Benavidez, no. David will put on, huh?
The Charlo.
They're not strong enough to hold back. You know, look at Abney. Okay, I'm not comparing Abney to Charlos. No, I mean, I worked with the Charlos for a majority of their career. Very talented fighters, very strong, very confident. They're not going to go out there and box. They're going to go out there and sooner or later, let's trade. Canelo, we've seen it. He could take a punch. He got caught with Cotto many years ago. He was a baby. Golovkin didn't hurt him. Golovkin might have stunned him, of course. Golovkin hits like bricks, but his chin is amazing. His body strength is amazing. His body shots broke down Abney. His body shots are, so I don't see the ability to sustain taking those power shots round after round after round. And Benavidez, he'll make it a fun, entertaining, a war, because the kid is strong, he's big, he's gutsy. But sooner or later, I mean, with all due respect to Benavidez, who's a great, strong kid, but he's not at that level yet. And I think they stopped the fight. That's a fight that I think it gets stopped in the corner. With all due respect, I mean, Benavidez has shown he's a strong kid, but Canelo's a different level. Canelo's a different level. He can box, he can counter. I mean, he's a great counter puncher. He's strong, physically strong. The feints, he'll bring it here and then come over here. I mean, I don't see anybody possessing trouble. I just see him dominating the 68 pounds and getting to a point where there's no more challenges, and probably then decide, okay, that's it.
Hey, Roberto, I have two last questions.
Yes,
First of all, I know you guys signed up with William Cepeda, Joseph Aguirre, Oscar Duarte, Luis Hernandez. Those are 4 up-and-coming great fighters for Golden Boy. But now, when you talk about contracts, promotional contract, can you explain for the young men here in Florida, in California, or throughout the world, that when they hear, okay, I want to be a promoter, I want to be a fight under Golden Boy, I want to fight under their promotional company. Can you just describe what a promotional contract is?
Absolutely. Those are, I'm glad you mentioned the 4 young men you mentioned. I call them my 4 aces.
Yes.
They're just great kids, young, dedicated. Luis Hernandez will be making his U.S. debut on the March 20th card under Virgil Ortiz. William Cepeda made his debut here in the U.S. Late last year on a Ring City card. Looked spectacular. Joseph Aguirre has been in training in camp, hopefully back in April, and Duarte probably in May. When we offer a promotional contract, it is the agreement between promoter and fighter, what their responsibilities are and what our responsibilities are. And basically it outlines how many fights per year they're going to have, what are the minimum amount of purses and rounds every time you step up in rounds, how the structure of the payments are, what they're allowed when there's a bout, for travel, for rooms, for meals. Basically an agreement where the fighter knows, I have to train, I have one job to do to prepare myself to be ready, and the promoter has an obligation of so many fights per year at so many rounds at so many dollars.
Okay.
That gives the fighter that tranquility, that fighter, manager, or trainer, I don't have to be calling around the world or country trying to get a fight. And sometimes these kids are paying to get on promoters cards, just to get some rounds, just to get fights in, just to get experience in. We've never done that. In fact, I'll get calls from managers or trainers or other promoters at times saying, hey, we'll buy a spot, give us a spot on the card. I don't like that, because they could pay us and we could put a spot on. Okay. Normally, if you're paying for the spot for your fighter and they're not getting paid, what kind of opponent are you going to bring? Probably not something too risky, because you'd be crazy to say, I'm going to pay for the fight and I'm going to pay him and put him in a 50-50 or a match that we can lose. So it's normally a 1-round blowout. what is the fan going to say? Oh, that was a mismatch. What card did you see it on? On a Golden Boy card. Who's the matchmaker? Robert Diaz. Oh, terrible fight. So that's why I run from those. And plus, we have so many obligations with our fighters that spots are not available. But a lot of promoters, the smaller promoters, they don't have the TV or their club shows. Yeah, that's how they do business. Hey, pay for a spot, pay for a spot. And my fans just want to see chingazos and have some beers.
The last question that I have, the Columbine's coming, NFL draft is coming pretty soon. With that said in mind, the NFL draft, they have a set procedure where they do not only a background check on the individual, background check on his family, psychological assessment, threat assessment, all on the individual. Do you have something in place where you find a great fighter? Do you have something in place where you actually do backgrounds on them to make sure, okay, this guy, we're going to invest $1 million into him, but let's find out, is there domestic violence in his family? Is there this and that? Does he need psychological help, physical help, etc.? Is there something in place in the boxing world like that?
That's a great question. And to be honest, I've never thought about that. And I think that would help tremendously. There's nothing like that in place.
Tell them why, David.
Well, when you have, they'd have to do background checks on some promoters and managers.
No, but there's a reason, Robert, he's telling you. There's a reason why David's mentioning it.
One of the reasons why, Robert, is because as a private investigator, I've always thought about that. You're investing $2 million on a fighter, but you need to know his background. And that's one of the things that rolling with the punches that we actually want to do. We want to start helping the promoters, helping the recruiters with backgrounds and helping to basically to tell you, how is this young man going to react after he gets his first $1 million? So that's something
that is never, that I know of, it's never been done in boxing. I think it's a great idea. I think also the tough part, a little bit on it would be that a lot of times they're coming in so young. So at that time, there might not be a lot that you find because everything's been good so far. It's once they receive that $1 million that a lot of them get ruined. You've seen careers go south because too much up front. I'm always been one to not, I don't like big bonuses. I like you earn them as you go. And maybe a structure of bonuses down the road. You win your first 10 fights, here's an extra bonus. You win a world title, here's a bonus. Because that gives a fighter that I earned it. Nobody gave me anything. I like the fighter that grows up with that mentality. I earned it. Nobody gave me anything. When you give too much up front without earning, I mean, we've seen it in the past with Panchito Bojado is a good example. I mean, that kid had so much potential.
He did.
He should have been bigger than Fernando Vargas.
Yes.
Because he had that smile and he had that people. Wow,
the charisma. He had a lot of charisma.
He had charisma, and most recently, it happened with us with Frankie Gomez. I mean, Frankie Gomez was a bad dude. I mean, inside that ring, I've seen him do things to fighters that it was like, wow, and he's still a baby. And, after his biggest win was Mauricio Herrera on a Canelo, I believe on Canelo, Amir Khan undercard, never saw him again. Never went back to the gym. We lost him to the streets. And that kid had so much potential. And there's so many that we never heard of because they just never hit the professional ranks. I mean, they stayed in the amateurs or they got in trouble. There was a kid back in the day, Marshall Martinez. I mean, there's so much talent back in the 80s. Torito Ayala. Tony Ayala was one of my favorite fighters watching.
Yeah, mine too.
Right? Yeah. You didn't see anything special, un gordito there, no definition. But man, was he vicious in that ring. And obviously he had some demons and did so much time in prison and everything, but he could have been boxing does save lives. Boxing does save lives. To this day, I tell people to use boxing. If they love boxing, life is boxing. There's some days that we have bad days. There's some days we have good days. There's some days we fall. We got to get up, learn from a fighter, what they go through in a fight. we can't just throw in the towel because, hey, this happened. Hey, you know what? Then keep going, keep moving forward. That's the past, and it's only going to get better. And the main thing is to get to that 12th round and have your hand raised, you know? So I use boxing a lot with psychology. I use psychology a lot with the fighters. I mean, I'm very, very, very close to my fighters to get to know them in order to match them, in order to know what makes them tick, what makes them, you know, their strengths and their weaknesses.
Let's bring him on camera.
And you know, Roberto, the NFL spends thousands of dollars doing backgrounds, but hey, you get a Ryan Leaf. You know, the Chargers got a Ryan Leaf. I mean, you being from San Diego, I mean, he was a complete bust, and they spend thousands of dollars. So yeah, so it either goes. But one last thing, I know I keep saying one last thing, but I think that have you heard of Howie Seindel?
Yeah.
Howie Steinler. Howie Steinler.
No.
Tell him a little bit about Howie Steinler, Jaime, and then we'll tell him what we're going to be doing on our show, the cold case.
So Howie Steinler was the owner of the Main Street Gym in Los Angeles, iconic gym back in the day. And we're working with his daughter, Carol Steinler, and want to reopen the case because it's one of the longest unsolved murder cases in the state of California. And so David's working on it, and he's actually asked the detective of
they came into the gym and shot him.
No, they kidnapped him and they shot him, and then he was found in a car off the freeway. But she's wanting this to happen and has given us permission to open up the case. And David has actually contacted Gil Carrillo, who is on the Netflix series right now about the Night Stalker, to possibly help him open up the case. So something with a little twist that we're working on.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But that's some other things. But I wanted to go back real quick, and this will be my last thing. I know I always say the same thing too. But I wanted to tell you that in addition to the background investigations and all that for the fighters, we also are working with a company, and we're kind of putting all the puzzle pieces together, where these fighters will also, with the service, get a teledoctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, medication prescriptions, and all that including into the service with a fighter. And we'll talk off camera the better
that.
part of it.
That is good, because a lot of times these fighters, and that's what makes them who they are, but have gone through maybe raised single mothers and don't have that father figure or somebody that can really talk to. And deep inside, they have so many issues and problems because they can't bring them up. So they depend a lot on the trainer, because that's like their father figure. But the trainer has maybe multiple fighters. Imagine how draining it could be to have all these kids coming to them, with I got this problem at home, I got this. So that service, and more so now at the pro level, not just in an amateur, but now more at the pro level, to have that one-on-one where sometimes the fighter doesn't want to tell the trainer or the manager their inside personal problems, so they can see a professional and be helped and guided. That is very good. That is very good. And even for the retired fighters.
We'll talk off camera a little bit more in detail. I think you would really like it, but that would be my last question, brother. It's been a great honor to have you.
What an honor.
Thank you, guys. I mean, I have no words to explain how honored, and thank you for thinking of me. And this is the first, hopefully not the last.
Absolutely not the last. And any of your fighters, please send them our way. We would love to do interviews, help promote whatever we can. We're here for you, and we really appreciate it.
I really thank you. David, I'm going to put you in contact with our PR department so that we can start getting you, on a regular basis, some of our Golden Boy fighters, man.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much, Roberto. Much appreciated.
Guys, man. I really appreciate the time. I had fun, and stay safe. Take care, guys.
Likewise.